In this video, I make an initial mistake and then I compound it by making a lot more mistakes afterwards, including spending $316.91 on the parts in this box. So now, instead of working on what I'm supposed to be working on, I'm going to work on this instead, which is probably also a mistake. But I think this will be more fun. I started out looking for parts for this vehicle. It has tracks that are rubber and really old. I figured at some point I might wear them out, so I was looking for a spare set. Of course, I went right to eBay, and they had something for this vehicle, but not what I needed. They did have other tracks, though. I found a lot of listings for universal tracks, and they weren't that expensive. They looked like a real bargain. They assured me they're safe to drive, easy to clean, and they could fit pretty much anything. I have this old ATV frame lying around, and I figured it could make an awesome toy for my kids. And that was why I ordered this box. Let me show you what's inside it. Got a wiring harness, air filter, carburetor, shift lever, intake manifold, chain guard, something in a box, ignition bits, and a complete brand new engine and transmission. This is a 125cc engine, has an electric starter, a gearbox of 3 forward speeds, and a reverse. This is the type of engine that came out of this ATV. Up top you have 2 mounting holes that fit here and here. On the bottom 4 mounting holes that fit this pattern. So I can drop this whole thing in that frame, add the tracks, and have one of those awesome machines I saw in the ad. Finally, the tracks arrived. They were smaller than I expected. Those rear tires are small. These are tiny. Not at all what they look like in the ads. The drive was tiny, about finger-sized. No way this axle is going to fit at all. They did come with their own axle and weld your own disc brake and sprocket. This is a small ATV, and those are way smaller. The width of this axle would look really funny compared to the width of that front end. There's no way I'm putting that on that. Then I came up with what I thought was a great idea. I have this old Honda CT70. Around 30 years ago, I stuffed the engine out of a Honda ATC into this frame. So this engine should fit. This smaller bike would definitely be a better fit for those tracks proportion-wise. Then I got to looking at details of actually doing it. That electric starter sticks up pretty far. I think I'd have to cut a hole in the frame right there in order to make it fit. And I don't really want to cut this frame up any more than I already did. Looking at the height versus the width of that axle, I'm not sure if it's going to be stable. Eventually I came to the conclusion that I spent a lot of time and effort putting this whole thing together, ride it once, realize it's unsafe for my kids to use, then park it in a corner for a few years, and eventually disassemble it to build something else. So I decided to save all that time and effort and build something else right now. Recently I did a road trip and grabbed some stuff back from where I grew up. And I brought home this pile of Minibike. This is actually the remnants of the first Minibike I ever owned. I bought it from a friend of mine that lived a couple houses down the road. It had seen a lot of use then, and then I put a lot more use on it. I still have the original forks. You can see they've been re-welded here. They sort of go that way, then they bend that way. You can see a zigzag in this fork too, and some braze filling up something over here. The end of both forks kind of go to the side a little bit too. The frame is well worn also. You can see one of the foot pegs is broken off. There's a crack all the way through it here. There's some stuff that was welded on and was cut off. Extra bits have been welded on here and there. And I remember this one particularly because when I brought it home, there was a centrifugal clutch right here. That tab I added on because my dad thought I was going to get my leg caught in the clutch. And I added that tab to mount, I think it was an old pie plate right here. My dad insisted on a kill switch on everything I had, which is where that old wire with the electrical tape came in. I remember it originally as this blue color. This part of the frame got painted green at some point, and I don't even remember why. This will need a bit of repair, which is perfect for what I want to do. I think this will be a lot better. The stance will be a lot lower. I think those tracks are kind of proportional to the size, and the height versus width makes this look a lot more stable. I think I finally found a good use for those tracks. I'm looking at this frame here, and it's basically two pieces of tubing. They're a little bit bent here and there, fairly rusty, cracked in places, and a bunch of stuff has been welded to them. I think rather than fix this all up, I'm just going to remove and replace. All these problems, gone. All I have to do is make a little section here. So I just need a little bit of tubing. The bottom of this ATV frame has two tubes also, and the right mount for the bottom of the engine. I'm not sure if cutting up this frame is a mistake yet. I'll leave it for a problem for future me. Like a while back when I cut up the exhaust pipe from this thing and used it on a snowmobile project. Took that ATV pipe, chopped it up into little sections. As long as you ignore my really bad welds, I think we have a pretty decent little exhaust system. I could use this exhaust pipe right now, but that was a past mistake, so it's done and over with. This is pretty close to fitting. I'm gonna have to make these a little closer together, make up something for there. I think we're in the ballpark already. I took that bit of frame rail and attached the engine to it, and attached a few parts to the engine. I actually was expecting this carburetor to point backwards, but I guess with the electric starter they changed it, so the only way it fits is that way. We'll take our bit of frame. It squishes the air filter a little bit. This is a double layer filter. It's just got a spring inside. We're gonna firmly ignore this bending. All right, so line up the front frame pretty close. That's the only interference. Throttle cable right between the frame rails. That's not bad. Lining up things a little bit here. It all looks kind of plausible. I'm gonna have to make a rear section of the frame rail. I had to make some mounts to the bearings anyway. I think I can run a piece right from the mini bike frame to the old foot peg mount on the ATV frame. We might have something here. The mini bike frame rails are about 1.5 inches wider than the ATV frame rails. And I want to get a little more height. So I'm going to bring these two inwards, which will lift this up slightly and get them closer together. So I'm going to make a pie slice in that so I can bring them together or control the mount. I want to start somewhere up with that weld, and I'm at 10 inches up, and the plate is about 2 inches high. I need to move each leg about 3/4 of an inch in, which means I need about 1/5 of that amount taken out of here. And it should work out once it gets down there. We're starting off around 8.5 on the outsides. Eight and a quarter, 7.5, 7.25. There's 7. It closed up one more than the other, so I'm going to readjust this a little bit, try to get that more even. Just get an angle in the vise so I push more on this side than that one. I see the issue. This side's been welded on the inside. That one hasn't really been. So I've got some old uneven welding to deal with. That's why I did this. Now I can use these two cuts as a guide and try to equalize them to try to get the bends fairly straight. There we go. Those actually look pretty parallel now. Let's see what we got here. Got 1.5. It's kind of thin wall. This feels thicker. Well, that's got some wall to it. This piece looks pretty nice. I found an even better source of tubing. This stuff is nice and clean. Ish. These little rusty tube-like lumps were what used to hold the rear wheel on. That one's completely gone. So I know there's a lot of rust in this area. I think I'm going to replace this entire section too. I took some chunks of that square tubing, Popped a large hole through one side here. And a couple of bearing holes. I didn't go all the way through the big hole. So I'm going to try to put this on the end and have the other side be a cap. Pretty close here. I can probably adjust it in. On the front edge here, I want a little piece of metal I can insert into both pieces of tube to line them up. If we dig around under the saw, there's always good little chunks. That's what I'm looking for. Thick wall, 3/4 diameter. Oh, got two of them. Little rust cleanup, they're good to use. So slide that in. It's a loose fit, but the weld will fix that. Kind of mocking it all up here. Those rails need to go in a little bit. End up running the hole saw through the other side too. That way I can push this all the way in, get that distance a little closer. Also, I can weld right there in addition to around here, get this all connected real solid. I didn't fully weld this thing, but I did some tacks that are heavy enough to hold it together. So now I can assemble and see what we got. So far, I'm liking this. Now I got to deal with the front tire issue because I don't have one. But that should be easy, because I had one of these cheap Harbor Freight tires that's almost brand new lying around. Problem is, it doesn't hold any air at all. I've had quite a number of these over the years. All of them have gone flat, except this one. This is not pneumatic. That's a solid rubbery type tire, not meant to have air in it, so none can escape. So this is going to be my front tire. But these tires are meant for being on the side of something, like a hand truck. You only have a bearing sticking out one side. Luckily, every time one of these has gone flat on me, I've saved the center part. So I got a lot of spare pieces. We're gonna do a little mixing and matching. These wheels are a split rim design. There's that outer piece. It bolts to the inner piece that has the bearings. So you can unbolt them and take them apart, and then you can bolt them back together with an inner piece and another inner piece. So now it'll fit a set of forks with the bearings outboard. These have a U-clamp with two conical washers. They're pretty frozen up. They're starting to move though. There we go. The track kit did provide a sprocket and a disc brake. It's a bolt-on sprocket that bolts onto this plate. This plate isn't attached, and it's kind of wobbly. Same thing with this plate. So I need to weld in my plate in alignment with the drive sprocket without it flopping around. So I got some long bolts. I'm going to run them from one plate all the way through to the next. I use long carriage bolts because they're under $1 a piece. Actually cheaper than the threaded rod at the hardware store I went to. I've got them bolted on, holding the disc brake together. The sprocket's the one I want to weld first. I've got a nut on either side. I already got a bit of the wobble out, but you can still see some. So we just look for the high spot and use the two nuts to move wherever you want in order to get it straight. Now that looks pretty straight to me. Now I've attached a magnet to the disc brake side, so I gotta get my position side to side. So I put a straight edge up here. Now I can slide it over until that chain goes nice and straight. I have good access for welding, but right now I'm going to add one good tack. Since I have it held in just one spot, now I get my final flatness. I'm getting a sweep of less than 30 thou. Right there is our high spot. It's right around this one bolt. Back it off just a tad. Tighten this down with a tad. You can see with that indicator how the position is dropping. We're at 0. All right, there's our new high spot. Let's tighten this one down a little bit. All right, there we have a low spot. So we're gonna do the same thing, but the opposite way. I doubt that sprocket's actually flat, so I don't think I'm gonna get this perfect. Now we have a variation of total about 6 or 7 thou. And I'm gonna call that good enough. Sprocket's welded on, it looks like it's running straight still. Now, while we're on the subject of chain, I gotta worry about my adjustment. These bearings have an oval slot. You can see the empty spot here. I pushed them as far forward as I could when I was bolting them on. But I need a way to be able to push them backwards so I can get the tension in the chain right. I've got an old square nut and a set screw. I'm just going to put it right here at the end of the bearing and I can weld it in place. Now I've got adjusters that will push backwards. This chain is going to be pulling that way against the adjuster. The original engine was just mounted to the bottom, and this is a small engine, but it's got a transmission with gear reduction. So the actual pull on the chain is going to be a lot higher. I found a couple of pieces of scrap tubing that I attached to the upper motor mount. When these sprockets try to pull together, that engine is going to try to go this way. Now that force will be transferred directly to the frame here. And I didn't weld these to the frame. I bolted these to a piece of angle that I welded to the frame. That way I can remove them, make the engine removal a lot easier. I found a tiny little battery in this parts bike. It was actually laying down this way, but it looks like I could mount this way. So it looks like it's a sealed thing I can mount in any direction. I was working on setting up all the wiring, and I noticed this sticker saying check the engine oil level. That's probably a good idea. There's a tiny little drop on the bottom of the stick. Wonder how much this thing takes. Right at the top. Perfect. Making the final battery connection here. I didn't see any sparks, so that's a good sign. There are 2 wires come off the handlebar switch. I didn't know where they went. One is green and black and one is green and yellow. This is blue and brown. The starter solenoid has green and yellow. So we're going to try plugging in there and hope we don't cause a problem. Nothing. Nothing at all. I'll try plugging into the other one, see what happens. Nothing. Okay, time to do some wire sorting. I took apart the handlebar switch, and once you have it apart, you can see what things do what. Then I traced from this switch to its plug, where all the wires changed color on the other side. I traced things back and forth, and came to these 2 wires. It appears these 2 wires need to be connected in order for everything to work. And they both have female terminals. These might be meant to hook up to another switch, but I don't have another one. And I don't think I really need one, because I already have the main key switch which does the same thing. But I noticed these nice terminals, which happen to fit a fuse perfectly. So now I have a connection that's fused. So we'll turn on the main power switch, and now we can hit the button. We get a cranking over, and there's lots of spark. The spark kind of surprises me, because I never installed this bit. I thought it needed this to make spark. It came with the kit, figured it was important. We'll just save that for later. As long as I have spark, that's all that matters. I need fuel next. Also need a few other things like a seat, stuff like that. Luckily, I did some late night online shopping again. And I have more new parts that I really didn't need to buy. It looked like fun, and I've already started down this rabbit hole anyway. Might as well keep digging. Let me talk you through the damage I've done. I bought a seat that's remarkably close to what the original one looked like. A gas tank that's for a bicycle doesn't fit this at all, but included the valves, the hose, a filter, and for some reason, it also included a brand new spark plug. The spark plug doesn't fit this engine. I'm not sure what it does fit, but it came with the gas tank. I also bought a complete exhaust system. Basically, all I have left to do is mount that old battery, and we can try firing this thing up. So we got to make a battery mount next. Starting with a square and a precision magic marker. Something like that. There we go. Let's see what happens. That's something. Fiddling with the choke here. I don't know if the carb's set anywhere close to right. This is the moment I remembered I never put brakes on. Gotta get to that. I am calling that a resounding success. There's still a few details to take care of. There's no brake at all. The battery box is held in by C-clamps, exhaust by baling wire, gas tank not at all. I've got to button up the wiring a little bit, make some spacers so the front wheel actually is on center, and other little minor details will make driving nice. But I am happy with the fundamentals, which means I can take it apart and finish welding that frame up and start finalizing some of those things. We have the basics of something that's going to work. It's going to be uncomfortable and dangerous, but it's going to work. The gas tank seemed like it had room, but the handlebar bolts moved backwards. I actually couldn't really steer well one way, and the other way it just pushed the gas tank off to the side. So I've got to move that backwards, but it's hitting the seat. So I got to move the seat backwards, and there is a little bit of room. So I'm probably going to move it back around here or so, and that should free up space for the gas tank. If I move the gas tank back so that the fuel outlet conflicts with this front seat mount, I got all my steering back. The seat seems to fit okay. It actually kind of looks a little bit better on the frame in that spot than it was further forward. So a little mount adjustment is needed here. I also have a brake disc right here, but no caliper. Actually, that's probably the first thing I should work on. This is a hydraulic caliper. It has a master cylinder on a brake lever, and a caliper, and a line. I'm working on making a bracket for that brake caliper. The first thing I did was take a few rough measurements and make one out of sheet metal. Now, sheet metal is definitely not strong enough to do this, but it's pretty easy to work with, and it's strong enough to hold the caliper in position to see if it fits. Mine didn't. The first version got some trimming and grinding in order to make it actually fit. It still didn't work right. So I made another version that fit a lot better, but was offset a little bit this way too far. So I shifted the holes over from this one and made another one, this time out of 1/4 inch thick steel. That should be plenty sturdy. I also made some tabs with an oval hole in them, because I realized that disc brake is going to move when I adjust the chain. I need my caliper bracket to move with the pillow block so that the caliper moves along with the disc. So this piece is going to go on top of the bearing, and that is what I'm going to attach the bracket to. Looks like this one's a winner. Seems to fit pretty decently. I did this in 2 pieces because I wasn't sure about that alignment there. But now I can just hold the caliper in position and weld those in place. The thing is, I hold the caliper all the way down, it's going to scrape that rotor. Got an old zip tie tail lying on the floor. I'm just going to shove that under as a spacer. So now the caliper has exactly 1 zip tie thickness of space for clearance. I can go ahead and weld these brackets in. I've never welded in this disc brake mount, but I still have my bolts here for adjusting it. So I'm going to set this straight the same way I did the sprocket. Got it running about plus or minus 5 thou, and I think I might be dealing with some variations in the disc itself, because I can't get it any straighter than that. So, calling it done. I took the old front seat mount, moved it back a little bit, and put it as a new rear mount. Grabbed some of the scrap metal that was on the back, and made a new front mount. And even got to use some of the spare scrap metal as a brace to hold everything in location. The end of the frame looked a bit unfinished. I just have 2 tubes going to nothing. So I cut a piece of thick angle, made some fancy corner cuts in it for style points. I'm going to weld it right to the back here. This is thick enough if I wanted to, I could attach either a trailer hitch or wheelie bars, depending on which way this thing goes. That'll be sturdy. I drilled some holes here for the gas tank. There's a bolt that goes through with a nut on the end, and this is a round tube. I want a flat surface where the nut hits, so I'll just make it flat. These front forks have to be straightened out. I mentioned they were bent, but I don't know if you saw it on camera. There's quite a few bends in it. It looks like it got bent in an accident, they got rebent to be fixed, but those 2 bends happened in 2 different places. On the other side, there's a section here where it completely snapped off and was welded back together. That's actually the straighter side, but still bent. When I level out the front part of the forks, you can see what it looks like on the back. Now I have a hydraulic press, and that's normally what we use to straighten stuff like this. But I can't really fit it in well, and I want to leave the wheel attached, because really I don't care how exactly straight the tubes are. All I care is that the tire points the same way as the fender, and then the bars are kind of straight too. So I want to leave the tire on so I can watch my progress as I go. Which means I can't use the press. But that's no big deal, as long as you have some heavy objects around. Here I have a heavy object, in this case a forklift, and a force applying device. Something along this line should do it. Let's apply some force. I'm putting a little dent in here, which isn't too big of a deal, and I'm caught it before it got bad. I added a spacer to level it out, so that's sitting more on a flat than a sharp corner. We'll try this now. Now that section looks pretty good. We just got to worry about this section next. A little more tweaking, and the fender and the tire look pretty straight to each other. If you compare the bottom plate to the top plate, you can see the top one's twisted this way just a little bit still. In this case, I'm using a jack to hold this plate steady and applying a rotational force. Now it looks pretty straight. I'm working on painting all these little odds and ends. One thing I've learned, if you have a part that has a flat side, put the flat side down first. That way when you flip it over, you can paint the big flat side last. If you paint this side first and flip it over, the paint on the edges can get stuck to the flat side. Now that all my mounting plates are welded to the axle, I can take apart all these alignment bolts and put in the right ones. I was almost done taking this apart, and then I realized those mounting flanges are identical, and I won't know which one is which. So before I go ahead and take this off, I need to mark them. I got a little box of steel impression stamps. It's not a complete one, not enough to do the job. I've got an S, I'm gonna put that on the sprocket side. I didn't have a B for brake, but I do have a D for disc. That's good enough. Now I'll know how the whole thing goes together, and it's not gonna wipe off or fall off. I can even paint it. I should still see that mark. Now I've got the axle back together with the sprocket on the disc on the correct side and using the supplied bolts with nylox. So that's ready to install. The parts I painted are dry now, so I get the fun of going through this organized area here and putting pieces back together one by one. Hopefully I have all the parts still. I can always make more. Though at the track you have a better view of that caliper bracket. I got the piece sandwiching the main part of the pillow block. There really isn't any kind of movement. It's a real tight fit against that. So that whole unit will slide back and forth with the axle. I also forgot to mention earlier, this little caliper is actually a pretty nice one. It came with a bracket that has 2 pins locating it and actually will let the caliper float around quite a bit. So that'll take care of any final variation in the disc, and as the pads wear, this will just move to wherever it needs to be. I'm really happy with that setup. I think that'll be good. I've got my front wheel all painted up so it actually looks the same on both sides now. I need to pop it in here, but this wheel is still narrower than the forks. This uses 5/8 diameter bearings, which is real common for this kind of small wheel. I'm just using a 5/8 bolt as an axle. So I need to make spacers for this bolt. There's a real easy source material for spacers for this stuff. 1/2-inch electro conduit. Fits perfect. Just cut it off to length and you're done. In my case, I went fancy. I cut them to length and shot a coat of paint on them. I'm using a nylock nut. These bearings don't have a spacer in them to keep them apart, so they could start squeezing in and bind up. So I'm just going to barely tighten that down so I don't put too much pressure on the bearings. The nylock should keep it on there fine. I got a bunch of electronics that all need to go right somewhere in this area, and I'm seeing a curve and an open space. So I'm going to try to put them right there. Big thing is I got to measure that curve to see what I need to make. Now a partial radius like this is kind of tricky. Luckily I have some precision measuring tools. It's bigger than 4.5 inches. Bigger than that. Yeah, we're getting in the ballpark. Closer, maybe the top. Yeah, that looks pretty reasonable. Now I have a good diameter to measure. Made a plate with a little hole in it and a key slot. And that should fit right there. I still got a bucket of self-drilling screws left over from when I did the bus. I've only been used once, maybe twice. Made another cover plate without a hole in it for the other side. My plan was to tuck all the wiring and the CD box and everything like that neatly behind it. But the wiring's pretty bulky and I couldn't quite fit it all in there. Next time maybe I'll make a plate that's bigger. Maybe. For now, I got an old washing machine drain hose. I think that can cover up a lot of the wiring. With that bit of hose and a few zip ties, all those wires are covered up. The only thing I left out is this one, which is apparently for a headlight. This old bumper has a set of auxiliary lights on it. But one of them's broken. The other one looks okay, which means this is a single lone light, needs a home. This looks like a good home for that light. Now I did check it before I put it on here, and the bulb is definitely burned out. So I'll need to deal with that at some point. But the good news about that, I don't have to do the wiring right now. I'll deal with that when I deal with the bulb, someday. Now at least it's here, it's not gonna get broken like that other one. I've got the exhaust pipe bolted to the head, and right now it's floating in midair. I gotta attach it somehow. And on my test run I did baling wire, I'm gonna upgrade it a little bit right now. I've got the muffler here, and that just slips on this pipe. And I could take this pipe and trim it down and put that muffler right here and make it a real tight fit and tuck it in. Or I could stick it way out the end and give this whole thing a Mario Kart kind of absurd look. I can always cut it down later. We're gonna go here for now. Now in attaching exhaust, some people get stuck with exhaust hangers and stuff made to do this. One often overlooked source of parts is the electrical department at the hardware store. This conduit clamp fits this pipe absolutely perfect. I just need to connect from here down to there, which means I can repurpose some of the old frame. I took that piece, I already had a bend in it, I bent it a little further, popped a couple holes in it. I think that'll work perfect. My sprockets are a lot closer together than was expected. One minor problem is the chain goes down at quite an angle and rubs the case slightly. I could grind away the bit of case there, but I'm going to try another way around it first. I've got a drawer of old ball bearings here. That's nice. Maybe. That looks about right. Let's find a bolt. It's got a nice flange on it. That fuel line looks about the right size. I'm going to take that bearing, stuff the little piece of fuel line inside the bearing, run my bolt through that. That flange is big enough to catch on the inner race. I also found a little flat washer, and that'll secure the race on the other side. We can bolt this right to the bolt where it was rubbing. And now, instead of rubbing the case, it'll rub on a bearing that'll just spin. That might work okay, especially since when we're driving forward, this side is the one that's in tension. That side's just slack, so there's no real pressure on it. The worst case scenario, if that breaks off, it takes out the chunk of case that's what the chain was riding on anyway, so my clearancing is done. So either way, it might be fixed. Gonna need to add some foot pegs. I do have one of the old ones here, but it looks gigantic compared to this bike. So I'm gonna do something different. But these are just made of tubing with a cross bolt that holds them on. It'd be real easy to make some new ones. Got some old 1-inch tubing. That 1-inch tubing fits perfect. Just have to chop it to length. Kind of looks a little odd with the tube just ending, so I'll put some kind of cap on the end. We'll pretend it's for safety. I've been having a little bit of fun with the plasma cutter. This looks like a nice safe end for the foot pegs. Nothing says safety like sharp pointy bits. Coat of paint later, we got this. That looks better. Now I can use the original bolts to attach them. Even had nice nylock nuts on them. Foot pegs done. I noticed a lot of ATV batteries are held in with rubber straps, and I found this real thick rubber band in our kitchen drawer, so I just put some hooks right onto the battery mount and snapped it over there. The battery seems pretty decent. I think it'll stay. Looking at my shift lever situation, I was originally planning on doing some kind of linkage to a pedal up here, but this thing's so small I can actually reach it with my heel and hit this foot pedal. So I don't know if I really need to go through that trouble. And this has some kind of weird heel-toe shifter, which I don't really like necessarily, but I'm looking at this extra bit, and I found a bit of old aftermarket shifter I had lying around. And I think I can have a hand and foot shifter. Maybe this way? No, that'll go right into your leg. Yeah, this way. That might be good. I cut off the back pedal, welded on the bit of handle, found a little T-shifter that fits it. Can't say it really fits, but after I shoved it on and threw a nut on top of it, it stays there. Pretty much everything's buttoned up now. I even got a coat of paint on the exhaust bracket, so the whole exhaust system is attached firmly now. And there's one set screw on the bottom. If I ever decide to annoy my neighbors, I can just undo that one set screw, the muffler comes off, the straight pipe is still rigidly attached, and it can be extremely obnoxious. I'm done working on that thing. My next step is to clean up all the tools around it, or take a test drive. Guess which one I'm gonna do. Brakes work. Power's not a problem, traction's not a problem. Wheeling a little bit. I like having brakes. I need more room to play. I started to hook up a trailer and realized that's serious overkill. I was planning on loosening up these clamps to fold the bars down to make room. It fits perfect. I didn't even fold down the third row seat. The only thing I had to do was turn the bars to clear the hatch. And it fits in fine. I'm out at one of my favorite test areas. The reason it's one of my favorite is there's this nice straight section of sand. Very, very loose, very soft, powdery sand. This is a good test of traction. Now 40 years ago, when this mini bike had tiny tires both front and rear and a 3-horse Briggs & Stratton, it would not even have thought about this. You basically have to push it all the way through. Even a regular mini bike would be hard pressed to drive through this stuff. But this has tracks. The front tire really dug in when I went slow. But going faster, it got better. Wheelies made it even better, which meant it was time for a helmet. And then there was a problem. The set screw on the muffler fell out completely. I can't even retighten it, it's gone. And now I think back, I can't remember if I actually tightened that in the first place. But at least now we know what the annoy your neighbors no muffler sound is. So I'm gonna slide it back on. We're gonna hope gravity holds it on for a little bit more while I do a few more things here. I'll put that on the list of stuff to fix. Time to try some hill climbing. Slow hill climbing didn't work. Fast hill climbing wasn't much better. The front end is just way too light. It was time to set my sights a little lower. Apparently that's a thing. Wasn't expecting that one. Now this thing is real light. There we go.
More speed, maybe?
I flipped the track over again. Well, that's it for this video. Even though this started off as a bad idea and I regretted it as soon as I bought those tracks, I'm glad I did it. Because I had a lot of fun reminiscing about my old mini bike days, getting my first mini bike up and running in some form, and going through the process of building something that's a little out of the ordinary. So I'm glad I did it, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to use it now. And then I had a thought. This whole thing came about from late night ill-advised purchases on eBay. I think I'm going to continue that. When this video comes out, I'm putting this up on eBay. So you have a chance to experience the same kind of regret that leads to fun that I did. Who knows? We'll see what happens. The other good thing that came about this project is it got me thinking about things with tracks again. I've got some ideas for a project that's been sort of stagnant for a while. And that should be even more fun. Hope you're having fun too, and we'll see you next time. It's really not that hard to load. It's kind of nice. Easier than a trailer.